For almost 2 years now, the Zephyrus G14 has been the king of small gaming laptops. But that monarchy might end today, because Acer has brought a revolution. The Acer Predator Triton 14 AI. Yeah, the name isn't very catchy, I'm just gonna call it the Triton 14. Minus that name, this laptop is really impressive. So let's see what this thing can do. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. From the outside, this thing is simply gorgeous. It's got a sleek, full aluminum body that can look pretty stealthy, but it also gives the option for some very cool looking RGB. And by full aluminum, I mean full aluminum. This is one of the sturdiest laptops I've ever felt, and it should survive quite a bit. But what's really cool is that it doesn't have a trackpad, but this long glass plate at the lower bottom of the inside. This is very comfortable to put your hands on. It's nice and smooth. We'll look more into this later in the video, because this is an impressive design. Once you remove the ridiculous amount of stickers on there. But the Triton 14 is a true thin and light. It is extremely portable and doesn't even feel like a gaming laptop. And it's the same story for its weight. Most regular laptops are thicker than this thing. But for its size, it still has pretty impressive specs. An RTX 5070 is nice, but that Lunar Lake Ultra 9 processor is especially interesting. Because in another laptop, the Ultra 7 variant of this chip got the best battery life in any Windows laptop I've tested. If that's the case with this guy as well, it'll be a major game changer. Unfortunately, it does get limited to a 5070 though, and 8GB of VRAM in 2025 is a bit of a bummer for future games. But at least that 5070 does get plenty of power from this laptop. And it shouldn't be cucked like in some other smaller gaming laptops. Now this guy has a fine port selection, especially for such a small laptop. Acer has done a great job here. What's also pretty cool is that it has a very small power brick, and that it charges through USB-C. This makes it very versatile obviously, but it does take up one USB-C port. And more importantly, it also limits this system to only 140 watts, which really isn't ideal for a gaming laptop. Wait, but how does it still have a high wattage RTX 5070 then? Well, the 288V in here is a very low power chip, so the GPU should still get plenty of those watts. Now this guy's keyboard is drop dead gorgeous. It's got a full per key RGB backlight, which allows for some really cool effects. But if this is too much for you, you can always just keep it on a boring color or turn it off completely. The keys themselves feel great as well. They're pretty clicky and nice and uniform. It's also got this handy little key at the top here that when you press it, it changes power and fan profiles. Overall, this is a great keyboard. Now let's take a look at this odd trackpad. As you can see, there's nothing here, it's just a glass slab. Well, that's because this thing actually has a haptic vibrating touchpad. When you put your finger on it, these LED lights indicate where it is, and it feels great to use. There's no actual click or moving parts here. It's literally just a vibration that feels like a click when you push on it. And while it's not perfect, especially when using 2 fingers and pressing on it, they keep improving it with updates. And 99% of the time, it feels great. Finally, someone put a haptic touchpad on a gaming laptop. Thanks, Acer. Oh, and the Triton also comes with a pen, which only works for the trackpad for some reason. This is still pretty cool, but it's obviously a very niche addition. Artists might find this to be handy though. It's nice and responsive, but it would have been a lot better if it could be used on the display itself as well. And things just keep getting better. It's got a 3K 120Hz touchscreen OLED display, which is quite literally as good as it gets for a laptop at this size. 3K at 14 inches is very sharp, and you won't see the pixels unless you play games like your Kinder. It does have this weird pixel matrix looking effect on it though, so if you look closely, it almost looks like it's a lower resolution. I'm not sure if this is on every model or just on my unit, but this does look a bit off compared to similar displays. It almost looks like a CRT effect, which is a bit distracting if you sit closer to it. I would really recommend finding this laptop in a store and looking at if this bothers you or not, because it can be distracting. But 120 Hz is plenty smooth enough for fast-paced games in my opinion. And this OLED is obviously gorgeous. It has vibrant but still accurate colors, it gets nice and bright at 500 nits, and it has infinite contrast. And once you see the perfect inky blacks of an OLED, you never want to go back to LCD. And it's even got a touchscreen. Some people will never use this, but for the people that do, this is awesome. But unfortunately, it does have a downside. It's pretty reflective. I think it does have some kind of slight anti-reflective layer, but it's pretty damn reflective. And if you sit near a window, a light, or even use it outside, it's gonna be pretty annoying to use this thing. And there are laptops that have fixed this issue, so it is a downside. As for its display hinge, it does have some wobble, but this isn't really noticeable during normal use, so it's fine. It doesn't open up very far though, so don't go pushing it open to 180 degrees, because it'll probably break. You can open it up with one hand, but just don't push it too hard, or the laptop will lift off the table like this. And there's also nowhere to grab the screen. It's a bit annoying to open it up with one hand. Alright, now my favorite part. It's speakers. Yeah, they sound awful. It's pretty disappointing. It does have these bottom firing speakers, as well as these tiny ones on the side here, but they just sound muffled. They lack bass, clarity, volume, and basically everything that makes a speaker good. They're obviously fine for casual use now and then, but in general, they're pretty lackluster. The webcam isn't the highest resolution, but it looks nice and clear. The microphone also isn't perfect, but you can understand what I'm saying, which is more than good enough. Now let's finally look at performance. The Triton's got a pretty high power 5070, but not a whole lot of power to work with. So does this low power Intel CPU hold it back? Well, in Cinebench R23, we see that the 288V performs fine in single core, but it has a really bad multi-core score compared to other laptop chips. But in 3D Mark TimeSpy, we see that its GPU is not being held back by that. So this should mean great gaming performance. But benchmarks do not tell the entire story. We need to play some actual games to see how this thing performs.
You'll never take me down.
What did you do, man? No!
The Triton 14 can definitely game, but it's definitely being held back hard by its power limitations. That low power Intel chip just isn't very good multi-core wise, so I wouldn't recommend it for productivity tasks. And with a max power limit of 140 watts, obviously that 5070 is never going to use 110 watts like it advertises. But it does still get pretty good frame rates, especially for how incredibly power limited it is. But the simple truth is, Acer should have just given this thing a higher wattage power brick. Sure, USB-C is nice, but this is really holding it back in terms of performance. It's about as fast as the Omen 14 in games, which had the same harsh power limits, but it just has a way slower processor. So again, I'd recommend playing games at 1200p, since you can barely see the clarity difference, but you get a lot higher frame rates. But this laptop is still thin and very small, so how does its thermal solution handle temperatures and fan noise? Well, it did beautifully. In the heaviest of games, both the CPU and GPU didn't even come close to 80 degrees, which is very impressive. I guess because it doesn't use very much power, it also doesn't produce that much heat, which is an ideal situation. But again, this really makes me wish that it had higher GPU options as well, because I feel like this thermal solution could easily handle a 5070 Ti or even a 5080. As for fan noise, it depends on which profile you put it on. In the performance profile, it stays relatively quiet for a gaming laptop. But in the turbo profile, yeah, it makes some noise. I would actually recommend putting it on that turbo profile though, and just getting a good pair of headphones. So far, this thing has been great. But does it also last long since it uses that low power Intel chip? Well, I tested it in 3 scenarios. Under light use with all the RGB stuff on, under light use with all the lighting off, and during gaming. In the light use test, I played a YouTube video with the display at full brightness, at 60 Hz, and with the dedicated GPU turned off. And yes, it does last pretty long. I mean, it's not the best of the best in terms of gaming laptops, but it's definitely above average. But that's with all the RGB off. If you turn the keyboard backlight on, as well as that RGB logo on the back, it lasts almost 2 hours shorter. You can probably get even longer battery life if you just turn the display brightness down a bit, but I personally don't really do that. Now in the gaming test, I played Battlefield 1 until its battery died, with the same settings as before. And like always, you shouldn't play games on battery on a gaming laptop. They're just not made for that. Now, being a thin and light, naturally it is cursed with the lack of upgradeability. It does have an upgradable Wi-Fi card, which could be handy for later, but it only has one M.2 SSD slot, which is already populated. So if you want more storage, you're gonna have to reinstall Windows or clone the previous drive. And it does not have upgradable RAM, so you better get a 32GB version. Now, as for the Triton 14's price, that's one of the few downsides it has. Since this thing just came out, it is pretty damn expensive. $3,000 for an RTX 5070 is just way too much, even for a 14-inch gaming laptop. But this price should be dropping pretty quickly. Acer does like their deals, so stay on the lookout for the holidays. There are also lower spec versions obviously, but those are also very overpriced. But maybe a better deal in the future. For now though, other 14-inch gaming laptops are simply a lot more worth it. Which finally brings us to our conclusion. Is the Acer Triton 14 worth it? At $3,000? Hell no. But after the price drops on this thing, it might be one of the best 14-inch gaming laptops ever. I mean, it is simply gorgeous. It's pretty fast for how little power it uses. It's got a great keyboard and a very good trackpad. It's made well and is damn sturdy. And minus that reflectivity and the weird CRT effect, its display is simply top of the line. The speakers are horrible though. Don't buy it for that. And it's also severely power limited. Other gaming laptops with an RTX 5070 will outperform it by quite a bit. But other than that, this is one of the best small gaming laptops of 2025. It does almost everything right, which I really didn't expect coming from Acer. But, and you know where I'm going with this, is it better than the Asus Zephyrus G14? The Triton 14 was literally made to be a Zephyrus Killer, but the G14 does have a bit more power and has already been refined with an extra generation. So, how do they compare? Well, let's see in the next video. Stay tuned. Now let me give a huge shout out to my YouTube members. Soundwife, Thomas, Inky, Mr. Frosty Dude, Dropzone1, Martijn Snijkers, Flimsy, Aki, Disco Volante, Daniel, Mr. Nuke, Sebastian, Christian Sands, Real Elf, Alan, Toasted, Eric the Red, Walter, Wesley Rhodes, Michael, Ghost Data, and Ano Gadar. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to content of mine, a shout out at the end of every video, and you'll also be supporting me as a creator to make these videos. And of course, you'll also be part of the Cool Guys Club. So you can use cool emojis like these in the comment section. So join the club if you're interested. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.